Federal Republic of Nigeria, trustees of the Metropolitan Club, the celebrated president, management committee, and distinguished members of the Metropolitan Club of Lagos, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I must at the outset express my gratitude for the honor of this invitation to address this famous assembly, the gathering of the distinguished members of the Metropolitan Club of Lagos. In my youth, and this is not to suggest that in any way that I'm old, I belong to a similar club like yours in Accra, the majority of whose membership subsequently went on to do great things in various sectors of national life in Ghana. Happily for me, I was the only one who went on to become president. I congratulate the membership of the club for its many years of service to the growth and development of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In Alhaji Olufemi Okulu's letter of invitation to me, he, an eminent jurist, senior advocate of Nigeria, outstanding public servant, and president of the club, indicated that members of the Metropolitan Club continue to be major contributors to the progress of Nigeria. Long may that tradition of the club flourish. And I'm amazed to receive a picture of myself when I had hair, and the club's eminent founder, Mr. Addo Ademola. I came here with several members in my delegation who, like me, are always happy to come to Nigeria, a country I describe as my second home. Indeed, Ghana and Nigeria are like proverbial sisters, siblings, and sometimes it is surprising to realize that we do not have a common border. We care about each other very much, and the rivalry between us can be found on the football field. A recent example being when we qualified for the World Cup at your expense. And in the kitchen, when we decide who makes the best jollof. You and I know the answer is obvious. As the Deputy High Commissioner said, Ghanaian jollof. In colonial times, there was a lot of interaction between the civilian and military intelligentsia and elites of our two countries, especially as many of them received their higher education in the same institutions in the common imperial center of Great Britain. This is a tradition we must, in the different circumstances of the 21st century, strive to maintain. On a more personal note, I recall the famous Lagosian lawyer of yesteryear, the late Ladipo Moore, who was the best friend of my father, the late President of the Second Republic of Ghana and former Chief Justice, Edward Akufo-Addo. They met at the Inns of Court in London and became bosom friends. After they were called to the bar, they traveled by boat together back home to West Africa. The boat dropped my father off in Takoradi and Uncle Ladi in Apapa. His sister, the late Kofo Moore, married Nigeria's historic first Chief Justice of the Federation, who coincidentally led the formation of this club, the late Sir Addo Ademola. They became the parents of Boyega Ademola, a lifelong friend from my youth and a member of this club. Again, I have two beautiful, elegant daughters, from Ile Ife, who were granddaughters of the late renowned lawyer politician Chief Remi Fani Kayode QC, and nieces of my controversial erstwhile brother-in-law, the Honorable Femi Fani Kayode. Ladies and gentlemen, when I was elected, and I recognize that it takes a Ghanaian guest to introduce the concept of ladies into the vocabulary of this club. When I was elected by my peers as chairperson of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, I outlined 5 immediate challenges facing West Africa, whose resolution I indicated was going to be of prime concern for me. As fate would have it, one of them, the consolidation of democratic governance in our region, has been on the front burner of my tenure as ECOWAS chair, with most of the meetings convened during my time having to deal with matters in Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso, which have each sadly experienced coups d'etats in the last 2 years. I want to use this opportunity to speak briefly inter alia on why it should be in our collective interest in West Africa to ensure that democracy is the preferred mode of governance, and why we should all say no to unconstitutional changes in governments. We've certainly come a long way, but we should not take it for granted that everybody has accepted democracy as the preferred mode of governance. There are those who still hanker after authoritarian personal rule because they claim Africa is underdeveloped and democracy is cumbersome and we need to get things done in a hurry. There are those who seek shortcuts to office, to exercise power without limits. And there are those who have no respect for the free choices of our sovereign peoples because they do not accord with their so-called ideological preferences. We still have some work to do to convince such people that we are all safer and better off under democracies. We should all continue to be guided by the famous dictum of the great British wartime leader, Winston Spencer Churchill, when he said, and I quote, "Democracy is the worst form of governance, except for all the others," unquote. According to the African Center for Strategic Studies, 18 African leaders have either modified or eliminated constitutional term limits in the past 2 decades. In addition, another 8 resisted efforts to institute term limits, bringing the number of countries lacking constitutional restraints on the exercise of executive power to 26. This represents almost exactly half of the number of countries on the continent. In contrast, the same source notes that 21 countries upheld term limits and 15 now have them in their constitutions, like Nigeria and like Ghana. The average time office holders have been in power in the 21 countries that have respected term limits is 4 years. In most of the situations where incumbents have not respected term limits, they've argued that the basis for hanging on to power is in response to popular pressure by their people to remain in office, and that term limits have no meaning in poor and underdeveloped societies where uplifting citizens has to be the utmost priority. Others also believe that leaders should remain in office for as long as they continue winning elections. However, electoral processes that have been used to engender term limit extensions or removals in Africa have often been marred by allegations of widespread irregularities. Ruling parties that apply this route usually enjoy near total control of most, if not all, the levers of government and the electoral machinery. Consequently, many African peoples have paid a steep price for efforts by leaders to circumvent constitutional term limits. Upwards of 90% of the 26 countries that either lacked term limits or circumvented them have experienced varying levels of civil unrest and political instability, including coup d'etats. The continent's democratic progress is threatened by such events. We have all witnessed directly the devastating effects the coup d'etats and attempted coups have had on the region. There have been at least 3 such recent occurrences in Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso, and an unsuccessful attempt in Guinea-Bissau. A myriad of factors underpinning unconstitutional changes of government have been identified. Amongst them are deficiencies in governance, political greed, mismanagement of diversity, failure to seize opportunities, marginalization, human rights violations, unwillingness to accept electoral defeat, manipulation of constitutions, and their revision through unconstitutional means to serve personal, narrow interests, and so on. Even more worrying, the expression of social discontent by the citizenry against these factors, usually through peaceful protests, has often been met with varying degrees of repression, co-option, violence, and further consolidation of the status quo. Is this the Africa we want? The reappearance of coups in Africa in all its forms and manifestations should be condemned by all, since it seriously undermines our collective bid to rid the continent of the menace of instability and unconstitutional changes in government, as currently defined by the frameworks enshrined in the Lomé Declaration, the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, and other important regional and continental instruments. Unconstitutional regime changes retard the growth of countries. As much as the drivers are largely domestic, the international dimension can also not be overlooked. Foreign involvement in fomenting unconstitutional changes, often in favor of repressive governments, foreign economic interests, and other would-be geopolitical benefits are also contributory factors. Some foreign entities regard coups in African countries as a means of enhancing their regional ambitions. As such, they engage in all sorts of disinformation campaigns in a bid to disparage the authority of democratically elected governments and instigate opposition protests against incumbents. In implementing existing continental and regional instruments and protocols, defaulting member states are condemned and suspended from the activities of continental and regional bodies, and individual coup makers are sanctioned. However, the reality is that these sanctions have not been applied uniformly. Whilst we are quick to sanction military coup leaders, civilians who achieve similar ends via the manipulation of constitutions to remain in power, for example, go without sanctions, although their actions are clearly prohibited in our legal instruments. This means that the existing frameworks need to be strengthened to capture such infractions. Ladies and gentlemen, it is crucial that we work together to change the African narrative, which has been characterized too often by a concentration on instability, disease, hunger, poverty, and illegal mass migration. We must help make Africa the place for investment, progress, and prosperity, and not from where our youth flee in the hope of accessing the mirage of better lives in Europe or the Americas. Our problem over the years, I suggest, has been leadership. The implementation of plans in ECOWAS, for example, has been left to well-meaning technocrats and bureaucrats. However well-meaning they may be, our region cannot make the bold, transformative changes it needs to make without effective political leadership. We need leadership that is focused on the region and not on individual countries. The European Union took off because essentially the political leadership of France and Germany decided to make it work. There can be little doubt that the common market of the European Union, grouping together the economies of 27 countries with a combined population of 477 million people, within a common customs zone and operating with a single currency, has, despite contemporary challenges, been extremely beneficial to the growth and prosperity of the European peoples. The European project has so far been an outstanding success. I'm of the firm view that Ghana and Nigeria, the two largest economies in the region, with a great deal of political and historical synergy, must provide equivalent leadership. We must provide the vision and passion to translate the ECOWAS dream of creating a viable common market of 350 million people into reality, especially now that the African Continental Free Trade Area has been launched. We have the numbers, we have the economic muscle, and dare I say, we owe it to the region. Achieving regional integration and consolidating democratic governance should go hand in hand with the strengthening of the private sector. For the avoidance of doubt, and just in case there was anyone who was unaware of my personal beliefs and those of my party, the New Patriotic Party, I support and believe in business and in the private sector as the generator of wealth and jobs. As the experiences of the successful countries in Asia, Europe, and elsewhere have shown, governments must help create an atmosphere for the private sector to thrive and create jobs and lead the socio-economic transformation of their societies. Government's business is to ensure that businesses are up and running and have access to the capital that will keep the wheels of industry and the economy moving. These are simple beliefs with profound implications. Governments have to assist this process by fashioning and implementing a comprehensive set of policies that will empower the private sector to achieve its goals. Appropriate fiscal, monetary, financial, energy, exchange rate, tariff, and non-tariff policies must be coordinated to enable African enterprises to be competitive and, where possible, achieve comparative advantage. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 has revealed that no country can go it alone in trying to create wealth, progress, and prosperity for its people. Indeed, the difficulties occasioned by the pandemic, such as strong inflationary pressures, dramatically rising fuel prices, unprecedented volatility of stock markets, and tighter global financing conditions have been exacerbated even further by the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the geopolitics of the Russia-Ukraine war. Our respective economies have been affected badly by these shocks, with the ripple effects felt by all. If ever there was a time to hasten the process of integration in West Africa and Africa. Now is the time, the result of which will transform dramatically and positively the economic prospects of the West African and African peoples. We all fell together and looked into the abyss together. Even as we closed our borders and shut airports, the reality dawned on all of us that we had to rely on each other to be able to get out of the trouble we were in. We have all gone down together. We should all rise together. In particular for us in West Africa, it has given us a good sense of how important it is to strengthen our unity and solidarity, and has intensified in us the motivation, if any was needed, to be self-reliant. By 2050, the population of our continent will be 2.5 billion people, up from the 1.2 billion of today. It will mean that 1 in 4 persons on the planet will be an African. The prospects for Africa's greatness, if we act responsibly now, are limitless. I'm an incurable optimist and believe in our capacity to reach the goals of progress and prosperity. And in doing so, I'm comforted by the words of the late great Marcus Garvey when he said, and I quote, "The black skin is not a badge of shame, but rather a glorious symbol of national greatness," unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not have to look far back into history to see that a stable period of constitutional government and intelligent management of the economy can lead to prosperity. I believe in West Africa's immense potential for greatness. I believe the stable democracies in West Africa can help unleash the energies of the West African people to inspire the successful transformation of the region and the continent. This can be West Africa's, indeed, Africa's century. We can claim it if we believe in ourselves and in our peoples. I thank you once again for the invitation to be in your midst to enjoy this celebrated traditional Tuesday luncheon of the club. And I'm confident that the best days and indeed the best years of the Metropolitan Club lie ahead. May God bless Ghana, Nigeria, Mother Africa, and us all.